Maryland.
Chair, for clarification, it is on for consistency review.
I know. Okay. Adam is Barksdale before. I don't know where she is. There she is. Okay, unmute yourself, Patty. Patty Barksdale.
Hi. Hi.
Okay, go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you. My point is that since this ordinance we're discussing today, which is 2-2022, goes against the master plan and is filled with some inconsistency and contradiction, is obvious to all of us that are present that the passage is being rushed through 11 days before the scheduled January 24th appearance before the judge, Kyle, at what point he is ordered that both parties come to some agreement between TNEC and AUCC. They need to present a joint letter. And the lawsuit against the township is in front of the judge. It does not allow for resident input, yet this settlement ordinance that is being considered today, which you have voted on today, affects those of us who live in that neighborhood. And we're not able to have any input on that. And we are hoping that the planning board will see how the ordinance goes against not only TNEC's master plan, but that is a rushed effort to have a lawsuit dismissed without any transparency about how this ordinance came about how it is warranted at this point right now. And what I also fear is that this precedent of this ordinance is opening the door for other things like this to occur in the township. And we have not been allowed as residents, I think, to even have any input or direction on the ordinance. It's like there's lack of transparency and the lack of allowing the town to really be able to discuss this ordinance before it's rushed through. And all I could say is being rushed through is because of this January 24th date with the lawsuit. I see no other reason.
So we as the audience know the same
Thank
stuff.
you.
While this amazing stuff is
Hey,
happening.
please mute. Some people are not muted. Please mute.
Eat all the ice cream you want.
Okay, I want to say two things. I have a Marilyn Figueroa, please. You could unmute yourself.
Hi. Good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I want to agree with Patty with that same, I'm talking about the same ordinance. We are neighbors from Oakdene Avenue. And this ordinance goes against the TNEC master plan in numerous ways. Number one is that if you look at the goal, number 2 of the TNEC master plan, it is to preserve the character of existing low density residential neighborhoods during forming the predominant character of the township. If you look at the ordinance and the overlaying of this property of 50 Oakdene Avenue, the AUCC, for a community center, and all that AUCC plans to do in that tiny little area is going to change the character of this quiet residential one-family homes. So it definitely goes against the master plan. If you look at objective number 10 of the master plan, which is to promote building and site improvements that have reasonable limitations on size, bulk, and site disturbances in relation to the existing fabric of the community. And I think that's key, the existing fabric of the community, which the people that are doing this ordinance don't live here. And we need to look at the existing fabric of the community. And the ordinance in the overlaying of a community center with basketball and tennis courts, stadium lighting, daycare center, after school program, summer camp, Saturday classes, gym, swimming pool, and house of worship does not promote improvements that have reasonable limitations on size, bulk, and site disturbances in a small, quiet residential neighborhood. Our neighborhood is not Vody Park, and not does painting a building bright blue and yellow promote improvements in keeping with the character of our quiet neighborhood. And one of the problems that's identified in the TNEC master plan is the decline in the non-residential tax rateable base. And when you look at AUCC 50 Oakdene Avenue as a community center and all that it entails, it is classified as a not-for-profit organization, so it will not add any taxes or any revenues to the town. Actually, the opposite, the town pays them to have rooms for daycare. And apparently the plan was, if they do have a pool, to also pay them to use the pool. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stone?
Thank you, Chair. Going through the purpose of the Ordinance 2022, the council provides in the ordinance a statement, whereas the Township Council wishes to provide an overlay zoning district to permit certain specified non-governmental uses and establish standards, therefore, within certain properties within the Township's P public land district. On page 43 in the document available in the 2007 master plan describes the purpose of this P public land zoning district. Quote, the township also has a P public land zoning designation, which has as its purpose to restrict development on public lands, which are in use, such as administrative facilities, parking lots, libraries, public buildings, and structures. The only permitted principal uses in the P zone are the aforementioned uses, as well as recreational facilities, wireless communications towers, and antennas are permitted as conditional uses in this zone. But going down to section 12 of the ordinance, it specifies that there are two properties. The following blocks and lots now in the P public land district are also included in a community center overlay. Those two properties are 3203 Lot 1, better known as AUCC, and 4703 Lot 4. The statement is made that 3203 Lot 1 is P public land and is part of that district. Yet in the next section, an amendment to section 3324, the zoning district requirements, it states that the purpose of this district is to restrict and provide guidance for the use of former public lands. The question is, how can a property be both a public land and a former public land? This is not consistent. It designates that the permitted principal uses that would be created in this district, which would also apply to the Rhoda Center, are to operate as a privately owned nonprofit community center, an education establishment, recreational facilities, and houses of worship. These permitted principal uses are in direct conflict with what's listed in the 2007 master plan as the specific purpose of the P public land district, including what would apparently be a permission to use the Rhoda Center as a house of worship. These two properties, the AUCC property on Oakdene and the Rhoda Center, have absolutely nothing in common. It's unclear why 3203 Lot 1 is listed as a P public land zone, because that designation should have been removed 20 years ago when the property was sold by the Board of Education and is no longer publicly owned. It seems that this effort in this.
Richard Kirtley?
Thank you very much. To sort of follow up with what Mr. Stone was saying, not quite as eloquent. I'm not as versed in the law, but the Board of Adjustment on August 1st, 2019, heard testimony from the owners of 50 Oakdene Avenue indicating that use of the facility was going to be restricted to people who paid certain membership fees. And in light of the fact that the overlay zoning, the properties have to be similar. And the Rhoda Center obviously is publicly owned. People who use it don't have to have some sort of membership fee to use it. And this seems like in a direct conflict. And so my question is, how could both of these entities be similar And it seems to me that this could be like a violation of the uniformity clause, the Standard State Zoning Enabling Act, which comes very close to spot zoning if the council decides to go through with this.
Thank you, Richard. Rosa T?
Yes, hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you put on
good
your
evening.
video, please?
Sure, 1 second.
No.
Sorry,
It's okay.
trying to figure it out.
Are you on a computer?
I am. Here we go.
Okay.
Can you see me now?
Yep, good.
Okay, give me a second. I need to. I'm calling regarding this ordinance that is going to change the property over at 50 Oakdene. I
Rosa,
wanted to,
excuse me for 1 second. Everyone else's name's been up there. Can you just spell your last name for us?
sure. T
Howard,
as
you
in
got it?
Tom, T as in Tom, U as in unit, M as in Mary, I as in indigo, P as in Peter, A as in apple, M as in Mary, B as in boy, A as in apple. To me, Pamba.
Thank you.
I'm one of the neighbors around the property that's under discussion. Just wanted to bring up one of the contradictions, inconsistencies of this ordinance. The ordinance specifies that the requirement for a daycare driveway that opens up to the street has to be 150 feet from an intersection. The ordinance also states that the requirement for a driveway for a house of worship is that it must be at least 75 feet from the intersection. Given that this was one of the variances that AUCC was requesting, a driveway close to a busy intersection, which will they be required to uphold 75 feet as a house of worship or 150 feet as a daycare center? The other item that we wanted to bring up is the requirement for number of parking spaces for a daycare center is different from the parking spaces requirements for a house of worship. Again, given that AUCC was requesting a variance of the required amount of parking spaces, thus taxing the residential street parking, which requirement will they be required to uphold? So we wanted to kind of ask those questions. These were all things that they had been looking for when they came and asked for their drawings and the submittal. And those are the things that were going to be discussed with a lot of input from the neighbors. And obviously, when you have an ordinance that's being passed above the input of the neighbors and without much discussion within 3 minutes, it's a little bit different than when we were in person, where we could talk and identify all these inconsistencies with a little bit more time and conversation between us and obviously the planning board. So thank you. And that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you, Rosa. Susan? Susan, I need your last name, please.
Schultz, Schultz. I'm also a neighbor. I live right across the street from 50 Oakdene. I'm very concerned because when I look and I read the ordinance, it just doesn't make sense. You have two lots here that really have nothing to do with each other. One is public. They're both right now designated as public, but one is public and one is private. The only way that I would read this and make sense of it is if there's spot zoning, because nothing that I see that you have here that it is non-governmental. I don't know how a non-governmental uses would have any impact on the Rhoda Center. So that seems as if it's just added into this ordinance. And that the whole purpose of this is to allow 50 Oakdene to be able to do what they'd like to do across the street from us. And it is a way of the spot ordinance, really, zoning, is a way to bypass around the neighbors and the residents here that have had so much input, so much to say, and so much concern about what is happening in our neighborhood. And it just feels as if this is really basically a cheap shot. I mean, and I know I respect people and what they're doing on council and on the boards, but this just does not feel as if you're treating the residents and neighbors here with respect and dignity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Melissa?
Hi, good evening. I'm also a neighbor, Melissa Sobers.
Spell your last name, please, Melissa.
Sobers.
Sobers. Thank you.
Correct.
Good.
First,
Melissa, hold on. We have to see you.
I don't have a camera.
Okay, go ahead.
May I speak?
Yes.
Okay, so to the board, I'd just like to say first and foremost that I agree with each of my neighbors who have spoke this evening. The items that they addressed, I agree wholeheartedly with what they have presented to you. This ordinance, which refers to 50 Oakdene, as mentioned, sits on public land or land that's zoned as P. And it's my understanding that the lawsuit that's currently in place is due to the AUCC suing the Township of Teaneck based on discrimination as a religious organization. There is a property located at 441 North Street in Teaneck that was purchased from the Board of Education in 1994. It's owned by the Islamic Education Foundation, and it operates the Academy of Greatness and Excellence today at this location. My question is, why not change the zoning from public to residential, similar to this property? It's a religious organization, and it's zoned as residential. I really don't understand much of the details of the zoning laws, and also the planning board's direct correlation. I did hear a gentleman in the beginning of the meeting discuss with Patty Barksdale how the ordinance was, how it came about, because I had the same question on who wrote the ordinance and why are we taking the steps that we're taking. So I'm just concerned about it being public land, about it being viewed as an overlay from the Rhoda Center. We are very close to the Puffin Center, which is a community center with less activities that are planned for this location. And as I mentioned before, I agree with all of the information that was shared with you so far this evening, and I will not repeat those. But again, why not change this zoning to a residential zone as opposed to the plan?